In Chapter 12, we're going to talk about second aorist indicative verbs. What is the second aorist? Well, the second aorist is still the aorist tense. There are not two aorist tenses. It's still the aorist tense, right? There's the big umbrella. Look at this impressive art. There's the big umbrella of the aorist tense. And then underneath that, we have more regular aorist, we call first aorist, and then irregular aorist, we call second aorist. So this would be analogous, for example, in English, if you have I slip, I slipped, I cook, I cooked, right? Just very regular way of forming the past tense would be analogous or comparative to the first aorist. But in English, we have very irregular verbs too, like I go, I went, right? There's no way you can think long enough or hard enough and end up with the past tense went. You just have to memorize it. You're like, where did it even come from? Well, a long time ago in English, there was a verb to wend, and over time there became like a hybrid where we use the past tense of this verb to refer to motion, and the present tense of a different verb to refer to motion. So I tell students sometimes if you see another person behaving strangely, you say, well, it maybe has to do with their family of origin, right? Family dysfunction in some way. And when you see a verb behaving strangely, when you see a verb, whether in Greek or English, behaving weirdly, it often has to do with the history of its formation, where it's showing up. Things are showing up from its complicated family history, we might say. There is some really good news here, though, okay? There is some really good news because there's really not a new paradigm to learn, okay? I know you don't believe me if you flip through the book, but let's think, for example, about the verb erchomai, right? The verb erchomai. What is the aorist of erchomai? Well, you might say, you lengthen this vowel and you add the sigma, and so you might think that the aorist is erxamein. That, based on what you know, that would be a great guess right now, but that is completely wrong. And the only way you know that the aorist is something else is you memorize it. There's no other way to do it. The aorist is completely irregular, right? Just borrowed from another verb in history and sort of adopted in, is eilthon, right? Erchomai means I come, eilthon means I came. And there's no other way to learn that. However, the good news is you're memorizing this with imperfect endings, right? So there are not new endings here. If you think about your imperfect endings, eluan, elus, eluin, eluamen, elueta, eluan. We are just going to recycle these endings on the second aorist. And some of you are like confused. You're like, well, if it uses imperfect endings, how do I know it's not imperfect? You know because of the radical spelling change in the stem, usually radical, sometimes less radical. That's how you know that it's a second aorist, the spelling change in the stem. But oddly, again, it's kind of odd that second aorist will use imperfect endings, right? Second aorist will use, they do have augments. You're memorizing the initial irregular form with an augment on there. So again, this is not something that you're going to be asked to write out, but here is the aorist, right? Aorist, we'll put a little 2 up here to remind us it's irregular, right? That's second aorist. We don't have to do that, but aorist active indicative paradigm, it's the second aorist active indicative paradigm of the verb lambano. Lambano, right? Lambano means I receive or I take, and so here is the aorist. And someone's like, well, what would it mean if, I did this, I did the lamban, and then I did the sit? That form does not exist. Lambano does not have a first aorist form. Lambano is irregular. It has a second aorist. This is the aorist form of lambano. It means the same. It's all the aorist tense. There's not two tenses. It's all presenting the action, including the beginning and ending and everything in between, just as a holistic presentation. This happened, right? I took, you took, he took, we took, y'all took, they took. But you're having to learn that it's building on an irregular stem, right? So you're going to memorize. The work in this chapter is not memorizing new paradigm, but is memorizing elaban. You just need to have that in your back pocket. You need to have that. So when I say lambano, you say you have in your mind. Maybe you have actually a handwritten flashcard on the front. It says lambano, and on the back it says I receive, and then it has a 2A, and you just memorize Elaban, right? Elaban. Notice all the way through here, once you have that initial form memorized, you've got the stem that stays the same all the way through. You have your augment because you're memorizing it with the augment on there. Augment means past time. And then you just have your imperfect endings that you're recycling here with the second aorist. Second aorist uses imperfect endings, but the spelling change, the radical spelling change oftentimes, here not as radical as some places, the spelling change in the stem lets you know that you're dealing with a second aorist and not an imperfect. Now, a few verbs, I think the only one that you know so far that does this, but a few verbs will have an aorist middle. We'll have a second aorist that occurs in the middle voice, right? And so one of these is genomai, right? Genomai, and so the second aorist of genomai is agenomane. Now, the spelling change here is quite minor, right? You have a again here and again there, right? There is a iota in the present and will also be in the imperfect, but for the aorist there's an epsilon, right? But besides that, we have your augment all the way through. You have your imperfect endings, amen, a toe, a Methodist on the toe, right? Those regular endings. But you just have to memorize. If I say what is the aorist of genomai, you have to just have in your brain agenomane, right? You just have to know that agenomane. This form occurs very frequently in the third person singular, agenita. It became or it happened, right? This is the phrase or the word that's often translated in the King James, and it came to pass, right? Kai agenita, and it happened, and it came to pass. So the hard work in this chapter is memorizing the forms. Let me recommend to you in the book Greek for Life that my friend Ben Merkel and I wrote. We give lots of techniques about memorization. Also, here's a free website, mullenmemory.com, that has some really good stuff about memorization. So what I did with these second aorist forms is I crowdsourced these to a class on campus, and I'm going to give their memory devices to you. You may not like them. That's fine. Come up with your own. But I'm going to give you these to get you thinking at least, right? Anabino means I am going up. Anebane means I went up. So, what we're going to do is try to say, what does this sort of sound like? And we associate it with the meaning of the verb, right? Anebane. Well, you say, anebane sounds kind of like anavane, right? Anebane, anavane. We can only approximate the sound. So you imagine someone named Anna as a nurse, and she's sticking the needle up your vein, and she maybe even says something as she sticks it up, and you act this out. Maybe you get your daughter to put on a little nurse cap and get her fake shot, and have a name tag on her that says Anna, and she says, "This is going up your vein," and you're like, "Ah!" Right? So you act it out visually, impress that upon your mind. And anabane is I went up. Let me also say, just as a little bit of a note, that this word, you can tell by the ending, right? You're memorizing it with that eta, is going to be slightly different. It's going to have a eta connecting vowel all the way through rather than an omicron or an epsilon. It's sort of doubly irregular. You're memorizing it with the augment on there, right? It already has the augment because the augment comes after the prepositional prefix. And if you look at these endings, they really are the same endings that you learned for the aorist passive, right? Eleuthane, eleuthes, eleuthe, eleuthamen. You might look back at the aorist passive paradigm to see eleutheta, eleutheson, right? Those really are the same endings. Ain, ace, a, amen, eta, ason. You are memorizing this form. You are memorizing anebane. And then when you memorize it with that connecting vowel there and with the augment here, that will enable you to recognize all those other forms, okay? So, anavane, right? Anna stuck the shot up your vein, right? Okay, here we go. Apothnesko is I am dying. Apethenon means I died. And the student said Apethenon sounds to him like Parthenon a little bit, and everyone who built the Parthenon has died. Okay, none of the original builders are alive. Okay, Balo means I throw. Ebelon I threw. And ebelon sounds a little bit like a balloon, and you can think about throwing a balloon. Estheo means I eat. Ephagon is I ate. Several students had devices for this. Ephagon, maybe you don't know this, but the word sarcophagus comes from that. You're going to learn soon the word sarx is flesh, and there you have the idea of eating. A sarcophagus is a stone box you put a dead body in, so its flesh is eaten away. There's a verb in Greek, oiso, which means to bury or care, and then ephagon is 8. You may not know that the word esophagus comes from these two words. Right, esophagus is a part of your body that carries or bears what you ate down further into your stomach, right? Esophagus. And maybe a little more accessible. A student said this made him think of his little son, and that ephagon sounds a little bit like, hey, food gone, right? Ephagon, hey, food gone. His son will eat, and then he'll look at his plate and say, hey, food gone, food gone. Heurisco means I find. Huron means I found. So maybe the more creative visualization, more senses you use, acting this out, seeing it, feeling it, thinking it, hearing it, that it will stick in your brain better. Huron means I found. So a student thinks about wandering around looking for Lake Huron and then says, Eureka! I found Lake Huron, right? This large lake in the northern United States. Eureka! I found Lake Huron. Lake Huron. Huron there sounds like Lake Huron. Katabino, notice again we have that bino ending is going, anabino to go up, katabino to go down. Very similar in form if you compare it to anebane. It's going to follow the same set of endings that we looked at a moment ago. It's going to ain, ace, a, amen, a to ason. See, there's our augment right there, katabane, because that's the prepositional prefix, katabane. So katabino, I'm going down. Katabane, I went down. And I guess a student who is not a cat lover said this sounded to them like cat a bane. Cat a bane. I don't know if you know the term bane, but like a curse, a horrible thing, undesirable thing that's a curse to someone. He says, this cat, maybe he imagines a little argument with his roommate or something. This cat is a bane. It will go down, right? Getting the idea of going down there. This cat maybe imagines, again, the cat peeing on his bed or tearing up something that he liked. This cat is a bane. It will go down. Sorry, don't want to offend any cat lovers out there. Pinot means I drink. Epion, I drank. A student said Pinot makes him think of the advertisements for the wine Pinot Noir, and they say if you drink too much of something like that, someone will say that there might be a danger of them stumbling around saying, hey, I pee on myself there. Epion, right? Epion. Epion sounds a little bit like a peon, right? Pinot Noir. Pinot, to drink, the name of the wine. Of course, I go to a Southern Baptist school. I am employed at a Southern Baptist school, and so as part of that employment, and as for students who are enrolled here, there is no drinking of alcohol, but this is just, let me just be clear, this is a memory device, nor is it an endorsement of such. Okay, pipto means I fall, epizon means I fell, right? A couple of things on this. Epizon sounds a little bit like Pez candy, the little candy you have at Halloween time, and you push the button and it falls off, right? Another student said this makes him think of like vacationing in Mexico, and maybe he gets, we need Mexico because we're going to use the word peso here. He gets sick, he gets stomach problems, so he has to go get some Pepto-Bismol, Pepto-Bismol. How much did it cost? A peso, right? A peso sounds a little bit like epizon. You need some Pepto-Bismol. How much does it cost? A peso, epizon, right? We could say he fell ill, right? He fell ill, right? Trying to capture the idea of the verb there as well. Pharaoh is I carry or bear. Aninkon is I bore. Don't forget the gamma kappa is more like an unk sound there. It's not a good k, but it's a unk. It's Aninkon. Pharaoh, I carry. Aninkon, I carried or I bore. Pharaoh sounds like the word Pharaoh, so you can imagine people carrying Pharaoh around in a little chair. And as we build this up, imagine Pharaoh has real shiny clothes. He looks kind of like a slick, shaky, questionable figure. Someone who's trying to make money off other people, wearing a big gold suit. And it's expensive running such a big ancient empire, and he carries around this little egg thing that he comes out and he puts under a cup and asks people to give money. He's always winning it. He's got this little egg con, an egg con, right? An incon. He's got this little egg con that he does. Another student said that an incon makes him think of an egg Kong. It sounds a little bit like an egg Kong, like King Kong, like a gigantic egg. And because he's Pharaoh, he doesn't have a normal size egg. He has a King Kong size egg. He has an egg Kong. Ago is I lead, I bring. Agagon is I led or I brought. And a couple of devices for this. One student said it made him think about in 1 Samuel 15:32. Long ago, Samuel led King Agag on before us, right? To lead Agagon. It sounds like King Agag on. Long ago, and we're getting the idea of leading, bringing, all that. Long ago, Samuel led King Agag on before us. Another student said this Agagon sounded to him like egging on, and he thought about how middle school boys maybe are egging each other on, leading them on into bad behavior, egging someone on, leading them on into bad behavior. Ago. Okay? Some grammars classify Adon is coming from blepo and some from harao, but the basic idea here is Adon means I saw, whereas blepo and harao mean I see. So Adon means I saw. I still remember when I was an undergraduate student many years ago, my freshman year, I lived in the dorm, and as I would come out the stairs on the third floor, I'd look back, and there would be the door wide open of a guy named Don, and he'd usually be sitting there, and I'd wave at him, and I'd say, hey, Don, right? I would see him. I saw him, and I would say, hey, Don, right? Adon sounds like hey, Don. Genomai is to become, to happen, to be. Egenamein, I became, I happened, I was. And so a student said Egenamein sounds a little bit to him like again, oh man, right? Again, we're just approximating those sounds. Egenamein, again, oh man. And so you just have to imagine something undesirable happening. Like, let's say your daughter drives the car into the garage door and it's very expensive, and then she does it again. And she just comes in and she says, I drove the car into the garage door again. And you're like, it happened again. Oh, man. Oh, man. Again, oh, man. Again, a man, right? It happened. Or in this, right, this is a first singular. So literally, I am becoming, or I became, I am becoming, or I happened, right? It doesn't really make sense there, but we're capturing the idea of happening, and we're capturing the sound. Gnosko, I know. Egnon, I knew. And a student for this said, well, I just imagine that this egg here, egnon, it sounds a little bit like egg. So I think about an egg that's speaking. And the egg just says, the egg looks at me. I imagine it speaking, has a mouth that says, Gnosko. And then I turn to someone else and say, egg known what I say, right? This is not amazing that the egg knew what you said. Egg known, right? Egg known what I say. Gnosko, egg known what I say. So gnosko is I know, egg known is I knew. Notice how the connecting vowel here is an omega. Yes, this is going to be complicated, isn't it? This is found in the book if you want to review it, but notice that we have this word gnosko reducing down to gn, right? Basically, what's fancy words for it, zero vowel gradation. Makes us feel better to say that because it's like makes us feel like we know what we're talking about, but basically it means all the vowels that were there are gone. And we do have the augment, right? Augment means past time. We have our imperfect endings, but we have them essentially with an omega connecting vowel all the way through. So I knew, you knew, he knew, we knew, y'all knew, they knew. Let me just tell you, this form right here really throws students off when they don't see it for a while, right? They run into it, they see that omega ending, they think, oh, that must be a first-person singular. But what's this augment doing here? They get really confused. But that is the form he knew, right? He knew. Whenever you see gna, and you don't know what it's from, it's probably from gnosko, okay? Erkamai means I come or go. Ailthon is he came, or pardon me, first person singular, I came or I went, right? So, again, I'm at a Southern Baptist school, and the student said, I imagine, they're in the room drinking ale, okay? Not something I've ever seen or that I think has ever happened here. But imagine someone coming in, the president of the school, the professor they respect, and they're busted, and they say, "Whoa, ale, I'm gone," right? Aelthon, ale, I'm gone, right? You were getting the idea of going, coming, and we're getting those sounds right there. Aelthon, ale, I'm gone. Echo is to have. Eskon is I had. So eskon sounds a little bit like ex-con, right? Someone who was formerly in prison but is now released. And if you're a kingdom-minded person, hopefully you're wanting people who were in prison to have lives of productivity and meaning again, and to be reintegrated into society. And so you could say, I have an ex-con who works at my shop. I have an ex-con, eskon, who works at my shop. Lambano is I receive. Elaban is I received. Of course, that's already close in spelling. One student said that this Elaban sounded to him sort of like the little girl's name Ella, a girl's name Ella, and then like a bon, like bonbon, a candy. Lambano means take, so you can imagine a situation where an Ella, little sweet Ella, took some bonbons from the store and now she's being taken away into prison or something like that, some dramatic situation. Lego is I speak. Apon is I spoke. And apon sounds like apron, so you can imagine someone in the kitchen, perhaps your mom or your spouse, your wife, chatting, wearing an apron. She's speaking. Apon. Another student said that Lego, they thought about little plastic block, a Lego, and they imagined, I can't draw it, but imagine an ape, like an ape crawling, a little tiny ape up here, and they pick up the Lego, they're like, what is that on there? And there's a little ape, and the ape turns to them and starts talking to them, right? There's an ape on, right? There's an ape on the Lego, and it's speaking to me. That is so crazy. I've never had that happen. One final footnote about second aorist, irregular aorist, right? We have these regular forms: Aelthon, I came; Ebalon, I through; Adamen, we saw; and Apon, they said, right? This form here, by the way, this ending on, that can be a first person singular or a third person plural. So it could be I came or it could be they came. I threw or they threw. This form here is unambiguous. We saw, and apon could either be they said or it could be I said. Remember, because those imperfect endings, just review, on, s, in, amen, etta, on. Don't forget that the first person singular and the third person plural are the same, right? So we're just giving a translation first of this form on the left. However, and maybe this is part of the explanation of why this has happened. In the Koine period, sometimes we begin to have alpha endings, right? The first aorist endings without the sigma added in, and that allows for lack of ambiguity. Now it clears up the ambiguity, right? Because the first aorist endings, think about it, without the sigma, elusa, elusas, elusin, elusamen, elusata, elusan, right? If we have that alpha nu ending rather than the omicron nu, that makes very clear that this is a they, right? They came. If it were I came, it would be ael tha. So we begin to see an encroachment, maybe for clarity's sake. I think also just laziness, and people speaking Greek as a second language, and they sort of are assuming more regular alpha endings than are found. But we find, for whatever reason, we find these first aorist endings encroaching and being used sometimes on second aorist stems. So if we have that alpha nu ending, that makes it unambiguous. It's a they came. It is not a I came. Ebalon, they threw. Again, unambiguously a third person plural. Adamen, we saw. And apon could be either, again, in the omicron form, it could be either I said or they said. But with this alpha nu, it's just going to be they said. So you will find that throughout the New Testament. You'll be reading along and you'll be, oh, there's the second aorist form, and it has alpha endings.